Hello and welcome to another episode of Tell Muses, a podcast by storytellers, with storytellers, for storytellers, and for anyone interested in the art of storytelling. And today, our very, very lovely muse is all the way from Washington, D.C., the USA, Baba C. Welcome, Baba C.
Thank you. Asante Sana, thank you very much. That's not American, that's Swahili for thank you very much.
I have learned a few words in Swahili from you, my Rafiki. You see, my memory sometimes works.
And I know a few words in Swahili. Oh, that's the other language, Simona, that I got to learn. I don't speak Swahili fluently. I know phrases. So I got to learn Swahili because I teach it in my workshops.
So would you please tell us, for our listeners who know you and admire you already, and for those who don't, would you please tell us a few things about who Baba C is?
Well, Baba C is a shy guy. No one believes that. I was in front of an international audience and I said, shy guy. I said, I'm shy. And this guy said, no, not you, not you. And I'm like, okay, so I had to come up with what shy stood for. It stands for Storyteller Supreme, Historian, and Young at Heart. So I'm shy.
Wow, you are shy.
But I am a griot and master storyteller. I have a career that spans more than 4 decades, more than 40 years. Before that, I was a poet during Washington, D.C. had a poetry renaissance in the 70s. And I was a person who put together what they would now call poetry slams or spoken word slams. But I used to put together shows centered around poets sharing their poetry. And I used to be known as the poet that acts out his stuff. And that was in the 70s. But in the late 70s, early 80s, I helped co-found an organization called the Nubian Theater Company. And through that, rediscovered the art of storytelling. Traveled around the country telling stories. But then I went solo. That's a story for another time. And I've been based in Washington, D.C. ever since. And so what we call the DMV, the District of Columbia, that's Washington, D.C., the state of Maryland, and the state of Virginia, they kind of surround us, but we're not part of them. We are allegedly an autonomous city because we're the nation's capital. And so I did a lot of storytelling in schools and libraries, community organizations, places of worship throughout the DMV, and then began to go to other places. So I think I've been to Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and California. But California, I was there for a business conference. So I may have left out somebody, and if I did, please forgive me. Oh, in West Virginia. As a storyteller, still gathering, and a little bit before I was Baba C, I used to do Underground Railroad reenactments. And we would take a busload of children or youth and their parents, and we would make stops along the Underground Railroad and reenact what it must have been like, down to, I used to make animal sounds, and I used to dress up as an old man. Now, mind you, I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. I'm dressing up as an old man. It took me about an hour and a half to get the makeup right, get the hairpiece right and everything. But as I grew older, it took me about an hour and a half not to look as old. But anyhow, so I did that, but I started doing more and more storytelling. And people walk, it's interesting because people who heard my stories 10, 20, 30 years ago will stop me in the street and go, Baba C. I said, yes, you told stories at my school when I was whatever year. And some of them say, I even remember the stories you told me. And that's great. And sometimes when I'm standing at a bus stop, and this actually happened, there was a carload of adults, and they looked up and saw me standing at the bus stop, and they went, Baba C. And the light changed. And as they drove off, they went, Baba C. Yes. So, stuff like that happens. And sometimes people, I'll be walking down the hallway or I'll be someplace and I'll hear, the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba see, the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba see. And I am humbled and honored when I hear that. It means I've done something right, that I touched somebody's life in a positive and meaningful way. So I really appreciate that. I tell people sometimes it makes me blush, although you really can't tell. A person of my deep melanation, you can't always tell when we're blushing. Anyhow, that's what I do. And to this day, I still do stories on worldstorytellingcafe.com. And that got me invited to Marrakesh. And I've been to all three Marrakesh International Storytelling Festivals. And even 6 years later, because it's every other year, I still hear Baba C, Baba C, Baba C. And someone said, wow, someone is a VIP. I said, I feel almost like a celebrity. And they went, almost. But I tell people it's an honor and it's very humbling, because when people think that much of you, when people respond that way to you, it means you've done something positive, something wonderful, and you don't want to betray that trust. So while I'm pleased that they respect me that way, I'm also humbled that they respect me that way. Oh, and by the way, the food in Marrakesh is absolutely delicious.
Well, Babasi, I think you're unforgettable. And you've already given us a taste of something I told Despin I would ask you.
So you ask him, Simona, now I must go. Unforgettable in every way. Okay, carry on, Simona, thank you.
Nat King Cole. And Nat King Cole, his daughter, decades later, with a split screen on a huge stage, she sang Unforgettable with her father. It was unforgettable.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, but I may
There-
be too young to know what
You
you're
were
talking
fine
about.
until you said too young. But there was a very famous African-American singer called Nat King Cole. He sang probably before you were born, but he sang and he was a national sensation in spite of segregation. They would not play his music or broadcast his TV appearances in the American South. But he was unforgettable and he broke a lot of barriers. And his daughter, many years later, was on screen and he was in black and white playing the piano. He was the first African-American superstar on TV, in spite of the fact that the South would not carry his stories. Well, that's what he sang, and singing is a form of storytelling. So anyhow, that's what that was about.
We have another superstar with us today, and people are interested in finding out what's happening with the real news here in the studio. So, Simona, you were saying?
I was saying, so Despina knows I wanted to ask you this, Babasi, because I love your song. I love the song that you sing when you introduce yourself. And I told Despina, if we interview Babasi, I need to ask him to sing us the song because I know your song. I think I've heard it just a couple of times, but every time I think about you, I go, and the Baba 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 C, I'm the Baba C, not the Baba B.
So once you're ready, we're going to
I'm
mute
ready.
ourselves and just dance to it, if that's okay with you.
I'll be glad. I'm just trying to take off the background noise removal. But here it goes. First, I have to explain. My name is Baba C. And I used to work with a group of very, very young ones. And they used to like to call me Baba Lou. Okay, so there's a TV show called I Love Lucy. And Lucille Ball was a very famous comedian back in 19... The kids watched that show, and her husband was a musician. And his nightclub, he was known as Baba Lou. And the kids wanted to call me Baba Lou. I didn't want them to do that. But you know what happens when you tell a little child not to say something? They say it. So it was a one-liner at first, and it grew into my Baba rap. And the Baba rap goes something like this. From Africa to the American South, magical words flow from my mouth. Water, sun, and the moon, they live in the sky. The signifying monkey got caught in his lies. A Nazi's lazy, but the spider's not crazy. When history gets hazy, I don't let it faze me. I'm the griot, the jolly, the teller of stories, the big and the small. I tell it all. Some of them try to grill, but they can't grill like this. Some of them try to grill, but they can't. Because I'm the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C, the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C, the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C, the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. Because I celebrate and educate and fascinate. Because I fascinate and educate and celebrate. Because I celebrate and educate and fascinate. Because I fascinate and educate and celebrate. I'm the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C, the baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. The baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. The baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. I'm the Baba C and not the Baba A, but Afrocentric is my way. I'm the Baba C, not the Baba B, but black and beautiful is what I be. I'm the Baba C, caring constantly. I'm the Baba C, caring constantly. I'm the Baba C, caring constantly. I'm the Baba da Baba da Baba da Baba da Baba da Baba C. The baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. The baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. The baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. The baba da baba da baba da baba da baba da baba C. See ya.
I love it!
Lovely. So, shall we say that Baba means something like daddy or uncle or something like that?
So Baba C means father in Swahili. Actually, Baba means father in many African languages and cultures, and some cultures outside of Africa. Let you know a little secret. Africans have been throughout Europe and even South America and all over the place, and I evidently left some of their language with the various places they visited or stayed or ruled.
Daddy in Greek is babas.
Yes. Baba in most cultures is a very positive thing. You got a few where it's the name of a witch or a demon. I'm neither. Yeah, Baba means father. I was teaching a workshop and I had a group of Spanish speaking kids there. And out of nowhere, they started calling me Papa Yes.
Same thing in Italian. It would be the same in Italian. Papa si.
I was saying, so the Spanish kids would call me Papi Yes. Papi Yes. And the non-Spanish kids wanted to, I said, nope, that's just for them. This is why I said, because in Spanish, Baba is Papi. And my last name C means yes in Spanish. So that's their special thing. So yeah, I'm Baba C, Papi Yes. As long as people say my name and what I am with respect, because I'm a griot. And some people say, no, it's griot because it's French. No, 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 no. If you look up storyteller in French, you would get raconteur. You will not get griot. And in African languages, every letter in a word is pronounced. It might be whistled, whispered, clucked, but it's pronounced. So Griot is griot. So I use griot sometimes when I'm rhyming things, but as long as it's said with respect, they can call me griot, they can call me griot, just don't call me late to dinner.
Perhaps you would like to explain to people listening what griot means first.
Ah, yes. I thank you, because sometimes it slips my mind. A griot or griot, well, we are the protectors, preservers, promoters of the oral tradition, of the heritage, of the culture, of the history. It is the job of griots to teach through the oral tradition about why the sun and the moon live in the sky, why children should listen to their elders, why elders should listen to children, because we are never too old to learn. It's through storytelling that we teach about heritage and culture and history. In many traditional African villages and cultures, the griot knows the history of his village, knows the history of the Oba, that's the king, knows the history of the important families of the community. And he's well taken care of. Not so much in the United States, but he's well taken care of. So the role of the griot is to teach through the art of storytelling. And I found out that I'm at least a third generation storyteller. Yeah,
Nice.
on my father's side, it is said that I had an uncle who was a storyteller. My father had an uncle who was a storyteller. And I did have an uncle who was a storyteller. And real quick, if I may, in 1976, he was a storyteller for this big thing that we have in the States called the Folk Life Festival, the Smithsonian Folk Life Festival on the National Mall. It's a big deal. People come from all around the country and all around the world. I was listening to these three storytellers on a little make-to shanty. One was black, and every time he told a story, I said, he sounds like my Uncle Charles. He was my Uncle Charles. Flash forward, 2012. I was the storyteller for the Smithsonian Folklife Festival on the National Mall. So yeah, I'm keeping it alive.
It's running in the family, apparently.
Yes, yes. I got some people in my family who are storytellers, only they just don't know it.
But see, how did this passion for stories and storytelling begin for you? Were you always interested in stories? Were you told stories when you were growing up? Did you get interested later on in your
Okay,
life?
so if you had told me I was going to become a storyteller when I was younger or when I was in university, I would have found you a therapist because that's not my desire. I'm having to bounce back and forth with this. Walking across the campus of Howard University, go Bisons! I either had an epiphany or a nervous breakdown. We are going to go with epiphany. I had a spiritual enlightenment that said that I was not going to go into oceanography, which is what I was studying for. Ever since I was a small one, a wee one, I knew I wanted to go into science. And I said, well, if I'm not going into oceanography or science, what am I going to do? He said, you're going to use your words. Well, my mother was a school teacher. My father was almost a lawyer. My father wanted me to be a lawyer. My mother wanted me to be a school teacher. And I knew if I chose one over the other, I was going to lose whatever parent I did not choose. And I was too honest to be a politician. So I said, well, what am I going to do? They said, you're going to use your words. So I switched my major to television and radio production, and I became a community actor. I became involved in the earlier mentioned Poetry Renaissance in Washington, D.C. And then I met a gentleman from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who people have been spending about a year and a half trying to get us to meet each other because he came to D.C. to establish an Afrocentric theater company. Notice I keep saying Afrocentric, not Afrocentric. The name of the continent is Africa. So while the Afro is a very nice hairstyle, Africa, Afrocentric. Okay, so I got involved in storytelling that way. Now, flashback. When I was in the 6th grade, primary, we had a homework assignment to write a short story. And I did. The next day, the teacher asked for volunteers to read their short story. Nobody raised their hand, so I raised mine. I had written a short science fiction story, and I read the story and did the sound effects as well. And my class, my 6th grade class and I did not get along. To this day, I do not know why. They blamed me for stuff that happened in class when I was absent. Okay. Yeah. And I had to show the teacher the absentee letter to show them that I wasn't here for what they're blaming me for. But anyhow, I read the story, did the sound effects, and I got the equivalent of a standing ovation. In fact, it may have been a standing ovation. That was my first foray into storytelling. Then when I was in junior high, I don't know what the equivalent is in Europe. We had a teacher that would come in during our homeroom or first grade, our first period, because our homeroom teacher and our first period teacher were the same. And for some reason, she kept getting called out of class. He would come and he would read to us. I remember this man's voice to this very day. He could have read the alphabet and we would have been mesmerized. And then when I was in high school, I wrote a series of short stories, and my librarian and somebody else wanted to get the book published because I was an African American who wrote such stories. And I turned it down because I did not want my stories published because I was Black. I wanted them published because they were damn good stories. Thinking back on that, that may not have been the wisest decision. But anyhow, flashing forward again. So I began to do stories, traveled out to the United States, did the World's Fair, did the Kennedy Center, which is a big deal in the United States. In fact, it's an internationally acclaimed performing arts center. I did the historic Lincoln Theater, and I did the Howard Theater, which is also an historic theater. Some people say the Howard Theater is DC's answer to the Apollo Theater from New York. No, the Apollo Theater is New York's answer to the Howard Theater in DC, because the Howard Theater was built first.
Very interesting, and thank you. But up to this point, people have heard us talk about you as a griot and a storyteller and a teacher, and they have heard about your stories and they have heard how people react to your stories, but they have not had a story yet. Do you think it might be time you gave us a story?
Sure, I would be glad to. Let me do one little thing. I have so many stories in my head. I have to put a a thing of stories in front of me so that I can pick wisely. So I'm going to go snatch that little piece of paper.
Great.
Dun, 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 dun. Now you see why I don't sing. Ah,
We're going to find out Baba's technique of how to pick one of the stories that are jumping up.
so I presume you want a short one.
Not necessarily, it's up to you. You choose.
Ooh, it's Simona. She doesn't know what she just said. Ooh.
Choose the one that jumps the highest.
You know, someone asked me, what is my favorite story? And I told them the one I'm telling at the time. So the one I'm telling is my favorite story. But you know what? I just thought about something. I just remember one of the first stories I told, but I'm not going to tell that one because I don't have a tambourine. And a tambourine is very essential for that story. But there is a story that I love telling. I opened it this year at the Marrakesh International Storytelling Festival, and I did the same thing at the last one. It is called The Cowtail Switch. And I love this story because it talks about why we tell stories. So I'm going to tell a version of it because I never know which version is going to come out. Because when you tell stories, they often come out differently at different times and different occasions. But this story took place a long time ago. You see, there was this Kijiji village where there lived a fierce hunter. What's that? How fierce was he? He was so fierce that when he went hunting and the animals saw him and they locked eye to eye, they just dropped dead because they knew there was no getting away from him. If he looked up in the sky and saw a bird he wanted to hunt and the bird saw him looking at it, it just dropped dead because it knew it was not going to get away from him. His name was Digogo. In my version of the story, his name is Digogo, after one of my favorite students of all time, back from 19... So Digogo would get up early in the morning and we'd go hunting. And the women, they would gather the children and they go out into the fields, tend to the fields and tend to the children and tend to the animals. And that's what they did. Don't send me angry letters. That's what they did. I'm the messenger. Don't hurt me. Okay. Well, one day Amagogo went out hunting and he did not come back. A day passed by, another day passed by, a week passed by. He was gone for 2 weeks. No. It was a week and 7 days. No. It was 14 days. He was gone for 14 days and nobody noticed that he had not come back. Now, Amagogo had children and he had sons. And one day his youngest son, Pele, sat up and said, "Where is my father?" And the village people, they stopped and they looked at each other. And his brother said, "What did you say?" He said, "Where is my father?" And then it dawned on people. They had not seen Amagogo for 14 days. No, that's not right. 2 weeks. No. They had not seen Amagogo for a week and 7 days. And the son said, "We must go find our father." And so they set out. There was one son who was good at tracking. And so he could see the tiniest of bit branch or leaf or the slightest indentation in the ground. And he followed that until the track disappeared. The other son said, "Well, I have sight beyond sight. I will find father." And so he began looking. He looked to his left. He looked to his right. He looked up. He looked down. He looked all around. And he said, "Oh, no, I see our father. No." And they rushed to a clearing where they saw their father, or what was left of him. There were bones scattered around the clearing. And they were so sad because there was their father. And one son said, "I will put his bones back together and make a whole skeleton." And so he did. He found the big bones, the small bones, the little bones, the chip bones, the tiny bones, and he put it all together until it was a skeleton. The other son said, "I will put muscle and sinew on the skeleton." And that's what he did. The other son said, "I will cause there to be blood to flow through the sinew and the muscle." And that's what he did. Another son said, "I will put skin over him so he will look like our father." And that's what he did. Another son said, I will breathe the gift of life into father. And that's what he did. Amagogo sat up suddenly, his body shaking and quaking. He opened his eyes and he looked at his sons. He said, "Hey, what the matter you? Why you gathered around me looking like that? And where are my clothes?" And they said, "Oh, Baba, you've been gone for 14 days. No, he wasn't gone 14 days. He was gone for 2 weeks. No, he was gone for a week and 7 days. Well, I'm here now. Let's go back to the Kijiji, that means village, and let's have a celebration about my return." And so they did. And on the way back, Amagogo was in the mood for some gazelle, and he saw gazelle, the gazelle saw him, and he just dropped dead. So by the time they get back to the Kijiji, that means village, they had gazelle, they had game, that's birds, and they decided to have a feast. Oh, what a feast they have. Because if you put food and music and dance together, you have a party. A party is what you go to, a party is what you are. Oh, they danced and they ate and they drank. Well, the adults drank adult beverages, the children drank juice. Oh, they danced, they drank, they ate until all the food was gone, all the juice was gone, all the dancing was done, and everybody went to bed. The next day, when Amagogo awakened, he went out into the field and he was thinking, he was in deep thought when he saw a cow tail on the ground. He picked up the cow's tail, he looked at it, he walked over to the brush and he chose a branch and he tied the cow tail to the switch. And then he embroidered it with cowrie shells and leather, and he made it look very officious. And then he would walk around that day and he would swish the cowtail switch back and forth across his shoulders. Some people said to keep the flies away, but that's another story. And he did that, and everyone saw the cowtail switch. They had never seen such a wonder, and they tried to buy it from him. One man offered him 3 goats. Another man offered him 3 goats and 3 cows. Another man offered him 3 goats, 3 cows, and 3 new wives. But his wife said, "No, I'm not having that." Finally, Amagogo said, "No, the cowtail switch is not for sale. But when I join the ancestors, the cowtail switch should go to the child that did the most to save me." And with that, he continued. Well, many years later, a sad, sad thing happened. Amagogo passed away. He joined the ancestors. And his cowtail switch, which had become a sign and symbol of authority, was laying before his children. And they were talking about who deserved the cowtail switch. "I deserve the cowtail switch. I deserve the cowtail switch because I led the way to father." "Yo, but the track went out. I saw father, yes, but I put his bones back together. Yes, but I put the sinew and muscles back in his body. Yes, but I put the blood in his body. Yes, but I breathed the gift of life into him. Yeah, but only after I put the skin back on him." And they heard a voice, and a calm voice said, "Pele gets the cowtail switch." "Well, why should Pele get the cowtail switch?" "Because none of you went looking for me until Pele said, 'Where is my father?' If not for Pele, you would not have remembered me. The cowtail switch goes to Pele, 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 Pele." And in that instance, the sons and the village understood something. They understood that as long as we tell the stories of our heritage and our culture and our history, as long as we tell the stories about our loved ones, as long as we tell the stories about our villages and our obas, our kings, as long as we tell stories, people and things never truly die, for they live within us and they live within the stories. And that is the story of the cowtail switch. Asante Sana, thank you very much. Oops, I stepped on a pin, the pin bent, and that's the way that story went.
Excellent.
I hate the stories. Yeah, it is. I have to confess. And sometime when we get the opportunity, I'll tell you the story of King John Silver, which is one of the first stories I ever told.
I have noticed, Babasi, that many times you pick an African story to tell to the people. Sometimes you tell Anansi stories, and you hold those traditions very close to your heart. I couldn't help but notice the Quanta candle behind you. Could you tell us a few things about the Quanta tradition?
Yes, I know they won't see this in audio, but I have to light them real quick. And there's a story behind those candles. So as you're watching me stumble, and pardon my back to you, but I meant to light these, but I was so excited. I don't know if you can see them twinkling. Okay, so the Kwanzaa kit behind me, I do stories for state national parks and services and stuff like that. Kwanzaa is a African-American holiday created by the Honorable Malinga, but many years ago by a professor at a California university. He noticed that everyone else had a holiday to celebrate. St. Patrick's Day, no disrespect meant, Columbus Day, although he never stepped foot in the Americas, Chinese New Year's. Everybody had a celebration they could call their own, except for African Americans. Well, we did have Juneteenth, but that's another story. So he decided to create a story of celebration. And he came up with Kwanzaa. Now, Kwanzaa means first harvest. And he developed a thing that there are 7 candles that represent the Nguzo Saba, which are the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. And there's the candle holder, there's a straw mat back there, there's corn that represents the children.
Is it okay with you if I describe it a little bit for the people listening? And then you can explain what it represents.
Right.
There is a candle holder that holds 7 candles. They're all lit. 3 of them are red. On one side, there is a black one in the middle, and the other 3 are green. So please explain to us, Baba. Thank you.
There's also a mat, and the mat represents the foundation, because before you can build anything, you have to have a good, strong foundation. There are also 3 ears of corn that represent children. There's a unity cup made out of wood that's up there. I don't have the fruits representing the first harvest because I kept forgetting to switch the fruits out. Yeah. So there's Umoja. Oh my goodness. Umoja, which is unity. Kukichagalia, which is self-determination. Ujima, which is teamwork. Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. Nia, which is purpose. Kuumba, which is creativity. And the last but not least is Imani, which is faith. And each day we practice something that represents the symbol of the day. And each day we light a candle. On the first day, we light the black candle. The black candle represents the people. The red candle represents our struggles and the blood that's been shed. The green candle represents the land and wealth. So every day we light a candle. On the first day is Ujima, unity, so we light that. The second day, we light a red candle, which is Kukichagalia, which is self-determination. So we light the black candle and the red candle. The third day, we light a green candle, which is Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility, aka teamwork. And so each day, we light the candles for the previous days, and we lighted a different candle. So we go black, red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, until all 7 candles are lit. On the 7th day, we have a big pate. Either we gather in a hall, or we help clean up someone's house and we prepare food ourselves, or we cater from a Black-owned business because it's about supporting the community. And we have positive music, we have dance, and we exchange zawadi. Zawadi means gifts. Each person can give one gift, just one gift. They can give one gift to another person. So if there are 10 people there, you can give one gift to each of the 10 people. And it's not about the latest, best electronics. It's not about the latest iPhone or Android or Samsung or whatever. It's not about that. It's about a gift that has meaning and purpose and thought. And to children, it's often a gift like a book or a game, preferably non-electronic, something that the child can relate to and cherish. It's about giving things that have meaning and substance, not money and electronics. And we do that. Now, it's a 7-day celebration. It starts the day after Christmas. It starts on December 26th and goes to January 1st. And although it's a 7-day celebration ending on the new year, it is a celebration that carries us forth into the new year, and we can practice each of the principles of Kwanzaa 365, 366 on leap year. Every day we can practice those principles. And that's Kwanzaa. Now, Kwanzaa is spelled with 2 A's at the end, because in Swahili, Kwanzaa is spelled with 1 A at the end. But they were having a celebration. They had children who wanted to be involved, and they had painted letters for each of the children, but there were 7 children, only 6 cards. So they came up with another one, put another A on it, and the 7th child was included. So that's why Kwanzaa, as an African-American celebration, has 2 A's at the end, Kwanzaa.
Oh, that's so sweet. They did it to include the other child, so that he or she wouldn't be left out. That's brilliant.
And talking about inclusivity, Kwanzaa is a very inclusive celebration. You don't have to be African-American or of African descent to celebrate it. It helps, but you don't have to. But we encourage, whenever possible, to have someone of African descent to conduct the actual celebration. It's taught in classrooms, and it started out as an African-American celebration, but it has gotten global attention. They celebrate it throughout the motherland, I call it the parent land, throughout Africa. They celebrate in the UK, and they celebrate it here in the United States. Some people celebrate in Canada. It's celebrated all around the world. I celebrate it, and as you can see, I have my Kwanzaa display up every day. So thank you for asking me to share that. So Kwanzaa is very important to me, and I've been celebrating it now, at least 30 years, maybe longer, but at least 30 years, because I think I started celebrating it in the 90s. Yeah, I'm 72 years old. I'm allowed to forget some things.
You are. And Papasia, I remember we celebrated Kwanzaa together at the War Storytelling Cafe. I think a couple of years ago you had a celebration at the War Storytelling Cafe.com, so online, not the one in Marrakesh, all together. And I was wondering, would you like to tell us about your connection to the War Storytelling Cafe.com and to John Rowe, and then how you got to go to Marrakesh and to the international festival there, and all the work connected to that.
So before the first International Storytelling Festival, I was introduced to worldstorytellingcafe.com by Baden Prince. And Baden Prince was with another organization, and I met him through that organization. And then he proposed to John Rowe, interviewing me on worldstorytellingcafe.com. And John said yes, and he did. So while he was interviewing me, he said, well, Baba C, could you share a story with us? And I did. And it grew like a snowball, a snowball going down a snowy mountain. And it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And I became a regular on worldstorytellingcafe.com. And I was telling stories almost every session. And then when they decided that they were going to do the first Marrakesh International Storytelling Festival, they asked me if I would be interested. I said yes. And they said, well, you're going to be there. And I started a GoFundMe and some other things to raise the funds to get there. And we didn't know. Well, it was not official. And then Morocco opened its borders, closed its borders, opened its borders, closed its borders. worldstorytellingcafe.com had gone through a lot of things to make sure the festival was going to happen. And they were waiting with fingers crossed. And at the very last minute, Morocco opened its borders again. So we rushed in, and we were the first big event to happen in Marrakesh post-COVID. So when we got there, there weren't a lot of tours, but there were tours, and there were schools available, et cetera, et cetera. And we went around the town and a nearby town, and we went to the schools, and I think we went to university. So we did that, and it grew and grew and grew. So the second time, because they do it every other year, I got an email and a call telling me, we're not asking you if you're coming back. We're telling you you are coming back. I went, whoa. So, a lot of people don't know that the storytellers that come to the festivals, we don't get paid. We have to raise our own funds and often make arrangements for our own room and board when we get there. Now, having said that, Mike Wood and his compatriots and fellow Riad owners accommodated many, if not all, of the storytellers that come to the Marrakesh International Storytelling Festival. So that was taken care of. And then some angels. There are angels who walk among us. And there are some angels who stepped in and said, your fare has been taken care of. Don't worry about your airfare. And when they found out that I had a historical connection with Josephine Baker, and if you don't know who Josephine Baker is, Google her. She was an activist, an actor, an actress, a singer. She got tired of not being able to perform before desegregated audiences in the United States. And even though she was the headliner, she could not go into the hotel lobbies. She could not dine in the whole. Long story short, she packed up her bags and she went to France, where they embraced her and called her La Baker, the baker. Well, she stayed in the Riad where I stay when she lived in Marrakesh. It's called Riad Stars. When Mike Wood found out that I was aware of this, he said, you're staying at the Riad Star. And so that was beautiful. And I've stayed at Riad Star. Every time I go, I stay at Riad Star, at least for part of the festival. No, for all of the festival. Sometimes I stay at a different festival doing post-festival work. Wait a minute. Let me do that. Sometimes I may stay at a different Riad doing post-festival work. And that would be Riad Spice, and Spice is nice. John Rowe and Mike Wood, Prince Baden, and members of my community, and other angels who request to remain anonymous, they have gone out of their way to make sure that I'm able to attend the Marrakesh International Storytelling Festival in Marrakesh, Morocco. And to them, I say, Asante Sana, Asante Sana, Asante Sana. Thank you very much, thank you very much, thank you very much. For without them, I could not have made it. Angels walk among us and make it happen. And through that, I got to meet wonderful people, like Despina, see, and Simona, and all kinds of wonderful, beautiful people who some I stay in contact even today. So that was a great thing, and I enjoy it. But the special thanks to Baden Prince, who's in the UK, because he got the ball rolling. So even though Baden and I go at each other like brothers who don't like each other, we do. In fact, sometimes people put in the comments when we're on .com that, hey guys, let's settle down, be nice. And we have to say, oh no, actually we have much love and respect for each other. I tell people Baden's the brother I never wanted. And then I say, just joking, he's a really great person. And once again, to reemphasize, Baden Prince is the reason I got involved with worldstorytellingcafe.com, and through that got involved with the Marrakesh International Storytelling Festival. Oh, I gotta mention something. This year at the festival, I participated in breaking and setting a new Guinness Book World Record. I and 100 or so other storytellers, global, local, and from different countries in Africa, we told stories nonstop in the round for over 80 hours. Yes, yes, yes. And we're now in the Guinness World Book Records. Okay. Let me calm down. But I had to put that in there,
Yeah, you had to, obviously, because that was amazing. Do you have the poster?
They gave us a big certificate that Mike then in turn sent to the king. But I understand the certificates for each of us. Unfortunately, the organization that puts together the festival does not have the funds to send each person a certificate, but I have to reach out to Mike and find out how much it would cost to have my certificate sent to me, because I want it, and when I get it, it's going to go in the background. So I'm working on that. Thanks for reminding me. I'm working on that, because it was quite a feat. And the thing is that the biggest challenge was from midnight to 6 a.m. So I said, oh, I can do midnight. And my mind said, no, you can't. I said, yes, I can. And the body said, well, maybe you can, but that doesn't mean you should. And then it reminded me, you're not 21, you're 72. I said, okay, well, maybe I can. That accomplishment had some special considerations to deal with. For instance, in the World Book, in the Guinness said that if you sang, it could only last for a minute total. They did not recognize poets as storytellers. And we had a very talented sister from New York. She couldn't officially be in the Guinness thing, but we kept her involved with storytelling throughout the area. And you had to have at least 10 people in the audience at all times. 2 o'clock in the morning, that's a challenge. And sometimes you get this, you would get this notice on your phone. We need audience. We need people. And the storytellers, bless our hearts, they got up and they went 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and other people. And we populated. They had this huge tent. And then they had a dais not too far from the tent. And so we populated that. And the other thing, you had to have at least 10 people in the audience at all times. Morocco is it's a Muslim country. So they have a call to prayer 5 times a day, and they do it over a PA system. When you do the call to prayer, non-Muslims must stop everything they're doing. According to Guinness, if you pause for more than a minute, you're done. You have to pass the microphone off to the next person coming on, who is allowed to wait for the call to prayer to stop. And then they do the call to prayer. And I got caught in that. And you can't perform again for 4 hours. So, even with all that going on, we set the Guinness World Book Record over 80 hours of continuous, nonstop storytelling in the round, in the round, in the round, in the round, in the round. Yes.
Talking about Marrakesh, we've had some people from Marrakesh here as Muses in our podcast, and one of them was young Omar Bella, which is a great fan of yours, and he's got in the habit of using this very low.
Oh, yes.
When he starts it, and he always mentions you.
I'm honored. I'm honored when they do that. In fact, I was at a school not too long ago, and evidently some of the students had experienced it before. And I started going long, and the whole audience joined in.
Wow.
And I said, well, I'm going to hold this as long as I possibly can. And I could see them take breaths to catch up. And I held it, and I held it, I held it. And then I went, time ago. And they went, when animals could talk.
Yay.
So, yes.
Crick cracking with them.
Yes. When people borrow aspects of storytelling from one storyteller to another or incorporate, is considered quite an honor. And I like the fact that he does long time ago. And I'm a big fan of his too. And I've watched him grow, because when he first started telling stories, he kind of told stories like this. Now he doesn't. He has what I call Clark Kent syndrome, and that he's very mild-mannered and quiet until he starts telling stories, and then he becomes super teller.
Yeah, so many storytellers transform when they start telling. It's a fact. You should listen to his interview, by the way. It's in the podcast.
I will find it.
Could we please ask for another story to finish this with?
Okay, let me see if I can do an Anansi story real quick. And I have so many Anansi stories. I need to publish a book of Anansi stories. I love Anansi because he is, I know the perfect Anansi story to tell. I just got to remember how it goes. Okay. So Anansi is known as trickster because he likes to trick people. He's a very lazy fellow. He does not like to work, but he likes to have the fruits of other people's labors. He does not like to cook, but he wants to eat. In fact, Anansi's 3 favorite things in the whole wide world is to eat, to eat, to eat, and to eat some more. Yes, I know what I just said. His 3 favorite things in the whole wide world was to eat, to eat, to eat, and to eat some more. And for those of you who don't know what mo is, it means more. Okay. So Anansi used to go to a nearby Kijiji village every day. Yeah, I said every, not every day. I can speak in dialogue. He would go to the village every day. And back during that time, there was a tradition. If someone showed up at your house around mealtime, you welcomed them in, offered them meal, offered them food, and if it was at night, a safe place to rest their head and send them upon their merry way the next day. Well, Anansi went to the village, and he approached the village where he knew they were about to serve their meal. And this is before people needed doors or doors that locked on their homes. And the people looked up and saw Anansi standing just outside the threshold. And they said, Karibu, which means welcome, come in. And he said, oh, no, I could not do that. I see you sitting down to eat. I could not. They said, no, join us. Well, if you insist. And Anansi would sit down and he would eat and eat and eat until there was no more to eat. And he'd get up and he'd go to another home. Karibu, join us. Oh, no, I could not do that. I see you. No, come, join us, join us. And this is what he would do. He would do this every day. And finally, the people in the village, especially the women, said, wait a minute. He never invite us to his place. He eat our food, but he never invite us to his place. And the women got very disgruntled. They said, hey, you know what? We're not his mother. We're not his maids. We're not his cooks. And the men were, Anansi's about to get us in trouble again. And so the village people, not to be confused with the musical group, the village people got together and they said, we will not fix any meals until after Anansi has come to visit. And so Anansi got up and he went house to house. He didn't smell any food. He stood outside the threshold. They said, Karibu. He said, Karibu yourself. I don't smell no food cooking. I got no time for this. And he went to the next house. Karibu yourself. I don't smell no food cooking. I got no time for this. And after going from house to house to house and no one had food, Anansi had the audacity, the uninvestigated gall to get upset. And he stormed off to go to his home. And as he stormed off to go to his home, he was met by Tortoise. And Tortoise has 4 legs. He's much, much bigger than Anansi, but he walks real slow. But Anansi, even though he can grow bigger than a man's hand, is still small compared to the other animals. And so the Tortoise said, Anansi, what is wrong? He said, not that it's any of your business, but I was just down the Kijiji, that means village. And those lazy people, they know I'm coming, but they prepared no food. I'll show them I'm going home and I'll fix my own meal and I'll not invite any of them. Well, can I join you? If you can keep up. And so Anansi on his 8 legs, he scurried, and the Tortoise on his 4 legs, he walked kind of slow, but he was able to keep up with Anansi. Anansi got home, and with his 8 legs, he started spicing and dicing and julienning and stirring and cutting. And Tortoise said, that food sure does smell good. And Anansi said, yes, doesn't it? And he kept on, and started plating the food. He said, that food sure does look good. Yes, doesn't it? And Anansi began to eat. But then he remembered the rule, which was with someone, wait a minute, not polite to talk with your mouth full of food. He said he knew that he had to invite Tortoise to sit at his table. He said, would you like to join me at my table? He said, yes. He says, well, in my house, before a person can sit and eat food at my table, they must wash their feet and their hands. Now, this is back during a time when if someone told you they had running water, it's because they ran down to a stream or a well, grabbed a bucket full of water, and ran back home with it. And Turtle said, and I'm going to change him to Turtle now for obvious reasons. And Turtle said, but, no buts. If you want to eat at my table, go wash your filthy feet and your filthy hands. And so Turtle turned around. And very sadly, he began to walk back toward the nearby river. Now, a lot of people use tortoise and turtle interchangeably, and I'm doing it this time, but they're not the same animal. All right, back to our story already in progress. Turtle got down and washed his hands and his feet and began to walk along the dirt path all the way back to Anansi's hand. So you know what happens if you walk on dirt with wet hands, you get covered with mud. And so he returned to Anansi's home, and Anansi had half eaten all the food. Turtle held up his hands. I said, hey, your hands and your feet are still filthy. Go wash them. But no buts. You're in my house, my rules. And so Turtle turned around and walked back down toward the river. But this time he laid huge palm leaves on the ground as he walked. He washed his feet, he washed his hands, and he very carefully walked on the palm leaves until he got all the way back to Anansi's home. His hands and feet were clean, and the food was gone. Turtle was not happy. A few days later, Anansi was walking through the forest, and he smelled the most delicious, the most wonderful thing in the whole wide world, food. And he followed his nose to the river, and in the river he saw the turtle, who was very slow on land, was very rapidly cutting and dicing and splicing food. He said, hey, that food sure does smell good. Yes, doesn't it? And he watched him be plating the food. He said, hey, that food sure does smell good. Yes, doesn't it? And Turtle put the food on his table. He says, looking at all that food sure does make you hungry. And Turtle said, yes, doesn't it? And then Turtle grabbed a spoonful of food and looked up and said, would you like to join me? Anansi said, yes, yes, yes. And he jumped on top of the river. But being a spider, he could float on the top of the river. And he looked so cool. He was cool like that. He was cool like that. He was cool like that. He was cool. But he didn't want to be cool. He wanted to be down in the river eating the food with the turtle. So he got off the river. He had his walking jacket on. He started picking up rocks and putting them in his pockets. And he jumped back on the river and he. Oh, that's right. You don't talk water talk. He walked toward the plate, the table, and he got ready to sit down at a chair. And Turtle said, oh, Anansi, if you want to join me at my table, you must take off your walking jacket. But no buts. I was in your house, I followed your rules. You're in my house, you must follow my rules. Now, Turtle knew what would happen if he took off the walking jacket. He would float to the top of the river, and he didn't want to be on top of the river looking cool. He wanted to eat. So he grabbed hold of the chair, held on to the chair desperately, and he took out one leg. He took out two legs. He took out three legs. And each time he took out a leg, he started floating a little bit closer to the surface of the river. He'd take out four legs. He'd take out five legs. He'd take out six legs. And holding desperately onto the chair, he knew what he had to do, because if he took off the walking jacket, he was going to float to the top of the river where he would be cool like that. But he didn't want to be cool. He wanted his belly full of food. And so he took off the seventh leg, the eighth leg. Oh, he missed the chair and began to float toward the top of the river. And he was on top of the river looking down while the turtle was eating all the food at his table. And he watched him, and he watched him as he floated down the river. Hungry, hungry. And the lesson of the story is, be kind to others. But the big lesson is, remember this, before you're unkind to others, before you're rude, before you decide to keep all your food to yourself, remember, what goes around comes around. Asante. Oops, I stepped on another pin. The pin bent. And that's the way that story went.
It's always so amazing to hear you tell stories. It's so funny. And all those little things that you put in, I just love them.
Thank you. But that's part of the art of storytelling, is to make it your own. And if someone else, like, I've heard several stories from different storytellers, and I've amalgamated their stories, and I call what I call Baba-size them, and and put my own spin on it, and made the story, good. Whenever I can, I like to give credit, like if I borrowed from one particular storyteller or one particular book. But most of my stories are an amalgamation of things that I've heard and read.
I need some credit for that. I was the first one to come up with the term despinize the stories.
You told that story?
No, I said I'm the one despinizing my stories, and you took it from the...
Oh, yes, despinizing. Yes, yes, yes.
So now you're publicizing them.
Because you make the story your own, and you imbue it with parts of you. And I throw in little things that were not in the original story, but I throw in little things like that. And it makes the story more, and it's usually call and response. I adapted my stories today so that they were not call and response, because Zoom has this funny little thing. If you respond, it'll be like, but anyhow, yes. So make the stories your own. You're under no obligation to tell the story exactly as you heard it before. Although if you're telling one of mine, I don't mind.
On the contrary, I'd say that it's more than just permittable. It's like, it's what storytellers should. It's advisable that they should make their story their own. And this is how we come up with all the different versions.
Yes. Well, when you tell a story, it is all right to tell a story like you heard it. Give credit to the source, and that's fine. As long as you do not disrupt the essence and the lessons in the story, I think you have an open license to modify. And some stories, like if I learn an Italian story and I'm telling it in English, it will not always translate word for word. So sometimes you have to make adjustments. If I tell a Spanish story, the same thing. If I tell a Swahili story, the same thing. So you can make modification, but I endeavor not to disregard or disrespect the essence of the story. There are a couple of stories that I won't tell because in order to tell them before children, I would have to change a couple of things that totally disrupt and change the tone and meaning of the story. So I won't do them. I love the stories, but I won't do them. 99.7% of my stories are family friendly. I do have a few stories I reserve for adults only, but I make sure it's only adults. They're not risque. They're just not stories I would feel comfortable telling in front of children.
As a moral of what you told us, I'd say that people should keep that, make the story your own, pay due respect, give credit where credit should go, and treat the story in a respectful manner. I think that sums it up nicely, don't you?
Yes. And what you just did was tell a story. Oh, and late coming in, but definition of a story. A story is the telling or the narrative of events that may or may not have happened. So as this interview is taking place, we're telling a story. In fact, we're telling stories within a story. So, when you share things at the end of the day with a friend on the other end of the phone, you're telling a story. Yeah, so telling a story is a sharing or telling of events that may or may not have happened. And that is a story.
So we have a term in Greek folktales when we do that, when we have a story within a story within a story. Sometimes it's even three times. And it's called enkivotismos, which roughly translates into inboxing.
Ah,
You have the smaller box inside, you get the picture. I don't remember who I heard this from, but I really loved it, so I'm going to share it with you and you can use it. One storyteller, whom I failed to give credit to because of lack of memory, once said that all stories are true and some of them actually happened.
I like that.
Good
Stories
one.
are true, and some of them actually happen. Oh, real quick, while the candles are still behind me. So I took those candles into a classroom setting, talk about Kwanzaa, and this was after Kwanzaa was over. And the kids saw the candles. One kid said, "Is that a fake candle?" I went, "No, it's an electric candle." I said, "In many places, you have to have a license to light a candle, even incense." So I found a way of lighting candles without setting anything on fire. So those are battery powered candles. Would you like to blow one out? And the kid looked at me, his eyes got real big. Yeah. So I let him come up and I let him blow on the black candle and I turned the bottom. And when he blew on it, the light went out. Well, what did I do that for? Now the whole class wanted to blow out a candle. So what I did was, as they were getting their call to go home, I let them come out, pick a candle. Most of them picked the black, some picked the red, some picked the green, but most of them picked the black. And I would hold the candle up and I would let them blow on it, turn the bottom, the candle would go out. They got such a big kick out of that. But I just had to share that real quick.
Magician's trick.
And so now they ask me when I'm bringing my candles back.
Right. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and the stories and all the wisdom shared.
The honor and pleasure has been mine. Atutanana bakahanana, which is slang for until the next time. Swahili.
Okay, great.
All right.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Until the next time, to be continued. Thank you.